Practicing medicine without insurance is possible. Imagine a private practice where you get to see your best patients every day, providing medical services you truly enjoy, all without the hassle of insurance. My name is Dr. T. Nguyen, and I'm a recovering specialist who was completely burned out from insurance-based medicine. I pivoted into direct care, where patients pay me directly for my medical services and have never looked back. If you're a private practice owner or planning to become one who's looking to be free of the grind of insurance and you're craving simplicity, efficiency, and connection with patients, you are in the right place. This podcast will help you map out your exit plan and uncover the mindset needed to thrive in today's economy. Welcome to the Direct Care Podcast for Specialists. I want to help you figure out the next step. And sometimes your next step is just taking a pause and listening to what others have done. And I'm going to share with you today about some of the mistakes I've made. And hopefully you don't do the same. If you are just starting out and you're just thinking about what building your direct specialty care is going to look like, I'm going to tell you it's probably not going to be what you think you need. If you're not going to work with insurance, your overhead is going to be much lower without insurance than with insurance. How do I know that? Because I started my practice with insurance. In this episode, you're going to hear me talk about how you don't need a 5-year lease contract to build your direct specialty care practice. My biggest and most costly mistake thus far, I'll even give you the dollar amount, and what I would do if I could do it all over again. So let me paint the picture. I was an aspiring new grad, fresh out of fellowship, which meant my ego was big, my eyes were bright, I was really eager to work. So I got a job as an associate, and I thought my fellowship and various experiences and certifications would translate to bigger dollars and thus more happiness. Then reality settled in. I was pregnant while I was employed and found that this job as an associate was deeply unfulfilling. So then I opened my practice. I took out as much money as I possibly could because I really didn't have the vision to know otherwise, to predict how much money I was going to spend. I just needed a lot of cushion. So I took the max amount, which was about $200K. And with that, I had an equally large vision of running this dream practice of mine. However, if you listen long enough, you'll realize that that life never came to fruition. That highly profitable practice in the insurance-based model did not exist because all of the money went to spending it on the overhead, my staff wages, my equipment, and so on. And it wasn't even covering my adult income. I was making less than what I made in fellowship in my first year of business. So anyway, those are some numbers for you. And if you are of the generation where student loans weren't a thing, then maybe some of this doesn't make a lot of sense. And maybe you're in a better position to make more calculated risks. But for me, I did not have the financial knowledge to be more careful. So when I graduated, I had $250K loan. I married somebody who had a bigger loan. So collectively, we were in debt by $500,000. I then took out another $200K for this business. I also had a baby at the same time. And then I live in California. So as you can see, not the best strategy, financially speaking. But I eventually learned. And so here I am sharing my experiences with you. So let's kind of scale back a little bit. When I was an associate, I knew at the tail end of my employment that I was not going to come back. I was going to go on maternity leave and just leave forever. So during this period of time, I looked at other properties around where I thought I would practice. And again, I didn't really know the neighborhood all that well. I just kind of picked out some property that looked good enough and I went for it. So I checked out this office. It was an established medical office. The doctor there had retired and the space was available. Unfortunately, it was outdated. And I wanted some updates like removing the carpet, paint, putting up a wall, taking out a sink, a couple of things that were just minorly cosmetic, but the shell in itself was functional as is. So I made my request, and the trade was that I sign on a 5-year lease because most property owners don't want to shuffle through a bunch of people every year. They'll ask for like a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year lease. The longer the better for them. It's hard to fill a commercial property these days. So I said, fine, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to practice here forever until I retire, right? And of course, that was my first mistake. And you may or may not realize, but a lot can happen in 5 years, like a whole ass pandemic that persisted for 3 years plus. So I took the 5-year lease, which costed me close to $200K. And then silly old me, I was like, oh, I need to make more money. I should open a second office to make more money. That was terrible. And so I did that temporarily, and it was in a more favorable part of town, but it didn't really pan out. I had to duplicate all of my expenses to this new location, even though I was subleasing an office and not a whole property. So I'm really glad that I tested the waters and realized that was kind of a silly mistake, and it was a low commitment. So it was totally fine, no big deal. But anyway, learning lessons along the way. So then I finally ended my 5-year lease. And at that point, I realized that my perspective needed to change drastically. I was actually only at that property for maybe 2 or 3 years, and I had to hold on to it because it was not leasable. Nobody was looking for commercial leasing during this time. And I had already found another place that was more suitable for my cash practice, because now that I wasn't running a volume-based practice, I could downsize. I didn't have to double or triple book. Everything I needed was just in one exam room and like the smallest of waiting room. And I think because the pandemic, people got comfortable waiting in their car, which was a huge advantage for me. I didn't have to have additional square footage. So I went from an 1,100 square foot office space with 5 exam rooms, 2 bathrooms, down to a 500 square foot space. And then I even downsized even more, and I rented one of the rooms out to somebody else. And I really just have like 2 rooms. One's an office and storage space, and the other is the exam room. So I only run 1 room. At any one time, I'm in the office. And I can't even begin to tell you how freeing it is to not have that money stress hovering over me, and how much more joyful it is to have that freedom, to not have that burden. Which is why I don't really suggest having a long lease. If you're anything like me, where you realize you're a little bit restless, you like new things, you like to learn, and maybe you often reinvent yourself, maybe every 2 years or so. I don't know. At the end of all this, I just really wanted to practice medicine in a very simple, manageable way. But I also did not want to be consumed by my identity as the doctor. I know we've gone through a lot of training to become a doctor, but I did not want that to be my only identity. I was also a mom. I'm a wife. I am a creative thinker. I'm a writer. I'm now a podcaster. I'm a blogger. I do all of these other fun stuff. And I didn't want to be consumed with just the office work as a physician. After all of what I know with the insurance-based practice, I have become disenfranchised with complicatedness or things that interfere with me and the patient. So I've become a minimalist in medicine. Less is more. And if that's you like the freedom to flee if you had to and not be tied down to a long-term lease. You really want to focus on the few. You like that less does mean more, so fewer patients will equate to more money. You'll see down the road how that works out. But it's because you get to focus on the fun things. You don't have to do everything. When you do everything, you water down everything else. Whereas if you just focus on the few things you enjoy, you become a hyper expert at those few things. You can charge more, and that's how you can have a practice that is lower in overhead but generates a lot more profit than you could possibly ever imagine compared to a practice with insurance, because the overhead is way lower. So a lot can change in 1 year, let alone 5 years. So don't sign on that long ass lease unless you know without a shadow of a doubt you will be there. You have it written in your business plan on how you're going to grow, and you put those actions in place to know that you will expand, and then you track that. And then you're like, yes, I do need this space. Okay, then that's a good idea to have a long-term lease. But without a plan, you're kind of just playing the guessing game, which is what I was doing. So don't do that. What I would do instead is, in the beginning of my practice, sublease with another doctor or another healthcare professional, somebody who's in alignment with what you do, because they could be a referral source, or they can just be that person who says, oh yes, I know this doctor, they do a great job. They can kind of function as, I guess, as the community connector. Who knows? But pick a place where it will be a symbiotic relationship for you to grow into and have connections with, and pay very little rent. There's a lot of healthcare professionals who rent space by the day, by the hour, and you can certainly do the same. So build up your reputation until you have enough cushion money to then expand. You can also practice medicine today very differently than how it was done 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What we know as medicine is having walls, lots of rooms, a big waiting room, right? The building as a medical practice. But did you also know there are lots of medical doctors out there who don't even have a place to practice medicine? They do telemedicine, or they do mobile visits. So those 3 things can be incorporated into your specialty if you wanted to. I have both a office space, I have telehealth, and I also do mobile visits. So I have a little bit of everything. And for me, that's fun. And it lowers my overhead and it increases my work joy because I'm kind of doing what I want to do. Practicing medicine today with the option of telehealth, doing home visits or residential visits, those are very desirable. Fewer doctors are doing them because doctors are choosing employment in corporate systems. And so those like us are very, very far and few in between and are becoming more in demand. We are offering something very desirable. People want this type of doctor. Concierge level, and you can choose to have concierge prices or not. That's totally up to you. So what you think of a traditional office space does not have to be that anymore if you don't want it to be. If you do, you can do it too. So you get to innovate your business because you are in control. And maybe that's exciting. Maybe that's scary. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Of all the practices I have seen, including the one dental office that has a hidden speakeasy behind their bookshelf, by the way, I am loving that so much. I truly believe that there's nothing and no limits to how you can craft your direct specialty care practice. And of course, that all depends on your life situation, as mine at the time was having a kid, moving into a new location, having real bills to pay, and then having to navigate what it means to be a female physician with a child and a family living in beautiful California who wants a life outside the office. So the most important lesson I have to offer is that life is really dynamic and go with the flow. You cannot truly predict the future, no matter how hard you try. And by the way, I didn't know I was going to be a business owner, and I didn't think I was going to have a kid. And yet here I am. So maybe enjoy life as it comes and loosen the grip from time to time. You don't have to control every part of your life. Also, don't forget to breathe and enjoy this beautiful asset that you're building for yourself and for future generations. Before I end here, I have a little favor to ask. Could you please shoot me an email and recommend a guest for this show? Whose brain do you want to pick? I'm looking for a specialist who has been without insurance for at least 2 years and have a few things to share with us. By the way, you can check out the other guests that I've already had on the show at teadpm.com/podcast. Check out who's already been on there. Look at the different specialties I have and, support them, check them out, say hello, connect with them. I want to thank you so much in advance for helping me put together this podcast with your feedback. And I hope you gained a little something from this episode. That's all I have for today. I'll catch you next week. Take care. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a review and share it with a friend so more doctors can learn about direct care. Let's keep the conversation going on LinkedIn so we can help more doctors escape insurance and thrive in private practice. Thanks for listening. I'll talk with you next time. Take care.